Hi there, I'm Richard Hill, the host of eCommerce One, and welcome to episode 211. Now we're back with our season talking about one of the most powerful yet overlooked growth strategies in e-commerce, link building. Now to break it all down, we're joined by Nick Altamore, a seasoned link building expert who has helped countless brands boost their rankings, drive organic traffic, and build authority in very, very, very competitive niches. We'll dive into the strategies that actually work, how to secure high quality links at scale, which is very important, and why most e-commerce brands are missing out on massive SEO opportunities. If you want to dominate search engine results and grow your store's organic presence, this is the episode for you. Let's get into it. We cover unexpected and unconventional link building tactics that actually work. Nick steps us through real world case studies and how a brand transformed its SEO with strategic link building, and predictions for the future. What's next for link building and how can you stay ahead? And of course, so much more in this one. If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast so you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Now, let's head over to this fantastic episode. Hi, Nick. Welcome to the eCommerce One podcast. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm doing great. Winter time has finally gotten the heck out of here, and it is sunny and beautiful outside. So I'm happy again because I hibernate in the winter. It's horrible. As soon as the first days of summer come out, I'm happy.
It's beautiful, isn't it? I think it's the same here. Obviously, we're in the UK. You're in the US. Where are you exactly in the US?
Texas, just outside of Austin, Texas, the capital.
So I think we're both experiencing this shift in season this last week, which is fabulous, isn't it?
Oh gosh, yeah. My mood elevates immediately as soon as this happens. I could not handle the gray days. If I had to live somewhere like that, I don't think I could handle it. I'd have to leave.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. So Nick, I met about 2.5 years ago at a conference, literally not in Texas, not in the UK, but in Saigon of all places, which is literally the other side of the world for both of us, I think, almost.
My first conference, I might add.
Say again?
My first conference, I might add, for SEO. Met one of my best friends over there, Richard.
And me.
Get out of here, dude. You're one of the people I look forward to seeing every year. We go antiquing every year. Richard and I have bonded pretty hard. There's another one in our group, Giannis, that we
So we've become very close friends, haven't we? Over the last, it seems like we've known each other for a long time, but obviously it's a couple of years plus. But I said to Nick, I'm going to get you on the podcast, and here we are. We've finally managed to sync the diaries up, and we're going to do a podcast all around link building, and building that authority with links. But before we get into the nitty gritty, it'd be great for you to introduce yourself, Nick, and how you got into the world of link building and e-commerce.
Sure. So I'm Nick Altamore. Most people know me as the director over at SirLinksalot.co. We provide backlinks and backlink-related products for SEOs worldwide. Currently servicing around 1,000 clients per month or so, and we've been growing steadily over the last few years. I got my start in SEO haphazardly, maybe close to 12 years ago, working for a VC-backed company that was very sales driven. I was just on the sales floor, and that's kind of where I started learning about SEO and what it was. And then I met my first business partner. We started learning through OMG machines, if you're familiar with them at the time. And then that's kind of where I started learning. What got me into backlinking was I was not a tech guy, real Neanderthal of a human being, if I'm being real, bartending and fighting MMA and stuff like that. Not a tech guy, really bad with computers. But once I learned about procuring domains, specifically because I learned about PBNs and how to build one, then if you noticed, and you know me, I collect antiques of all kinds. Well, then that clicked for me and resonated because I loved collecting domains. Hunting for that was like mining for gold or going looking for items, etc. Right? And so that became the first thing that really grabbed my attention. I started making really good money off flipping domains or using them as a PBN. At the time, PBN was the hot topic. We don't sell all that many PBNs anymore, so we modified, how we build a PBN now to make it more accessible or more interesting to people that want to use those techniques. But at the time, that was kind of what got me in. So from there, I started learning about different recipes as far as backlinks and using them and what kind of benefits they provided. And as I added them to the toolkit, I started selling them on at the time it was Freedom Links, and then it morphed to SirLinksalot. And now, after getting the Power Hub, it branched out into agency. Finally started a SaaS company, which I think is like a rite of passage in this industry. And then, of course, I did e-commerce as well, which we'll get into. But yeah, we'll talk about that
Yeah.
because I think
So
I've got some tips.
quite an experience there, working in sort of all different sides of the industry, but ultimately, 12 plus years of experience seeing things change, seeing things come and go. Obviously, a lot of consistent things, but ultimately different strategies, testing different things, and now ultimately servicing 1,000 plus clients in the link building industry, from small businesses all the way through to agencies to big corporates. And we've talked about a few things like that over the sort of conversations we've had. But I think to kick things off then, Nick, I think it'd be good for you to, there's a lot we could cover in link
Always, yeah.
building, but I think in terms of breaking down, I'll try and simplify things as much as we can on the podcast, breaking down your process for sort of acquiring links. Step us through what an effective campaign looks like from start to finish with let's pick an e-com store that's selling, you pick a product. I don't mind. You could pick a product, a store selling watches. Maybe we're both big. We've done some watch conversation, had some
My
watch conversations,
Londoran,
haven't we, over the
yes.
years? But you're an e-com store doing a few million quid selling watches. What is the link process for
Sure.
that?
So link building, and over on SirLinksalot, YouTube, or our site, etc., we give out information on a lot of this stuff. I will repeat over and over again over the years that link building, the way I like to practice it, because it is something that you can manipulate to your own understanding of it, and it's specific project to project as well. But I always hold true to, it's important to get yourself foundational link building early on. And this is
Yeah.
going to be in the form of pillow links, citations, press releases, things that you're getting natural anchors to the home page just to start getting crawlability
Yep.
from search engines to this
Yep.
website. I don't venture off. I don't use money anchors. I aggressively attack the homepage only with
Yep.
natural random anchors until I see good movement in the SERPs using a
So
tool
natural
like
anchors
Ahrefs.
would be more brand
Yes, absolutely.
specific. Yep.
Brand, naked
Yep.
URL, go
Yep.
to this website,
Yeah.
the
Click here.
random
Sort of.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
maybe I'll do some long tail stuff just to inject some sort of like, if it's a watch company, brand fine watches here,
Yeah.
brand timepieces, and we start collectively building a narrative, because that's what we're doing. We're building a narrative with the on page. We're building a narrative with the off page. An algorithm is coming and processing all this data
Yeah.
and making sense of it in the form of a story that it digests, right? So I always go very aggressive that route. What that does is it helps insulate the site when you do start getting a little bit more aggressive with, your gray hat techniques, let's say, right?
Yep.
Where you are using exact match anchors, best dive watch, best,
Yep.
all that stuff that quite honestly is a lot harder to go after now. But I think I've got some tips that I've been working on that we can talk about later. Sorry for the noise. It's incredibly windy outside. So I like to see, yeah, let's go back to that. Pillow links, foundational links, right, can
So
be,
what's your when you say pillow links, for the listeners? What's sort of a definition of a pillow link? 'Cause I think a lot of them will have heard of citations, directories, but pillow
sure.
links is more of an industry term.
Yeah, directories, forums, blog comments, anything that's just like easily accessible.
Yeah.
I know social signals count as, I mean, we consider them something else, but they are crawlable backlinks, right? So
Yeah.
social signals I throw in there, even Web 2.0s and stuff that might be a little bit outdated, just use it naturally. For example, with our products, we use aged Web 2.0s. They've been around forever. They're pumping real content. Like, they'll add some value, not like they did 5-10 years ago, but for pillowing, they serve their purpose, right? The entire process here just has to do with getting a lot of links to your site, a lot of crawlability to your site, that we can then branch off of.
So
What you'll
phase
come to
one,
find,
pillow links foundation. Yeah.
and also, I like to pillow using guest posts, niche edits, and the more expensive links as well, because you want some authority going with natural anchors. A lot of newer SEOs, when they get started, are going to go, well, I don't want to waste a really good backlink without an exact match anchor. Well, that's counterintuitive to what the algorithm actually wants. You want to pillow using some of these higher authority things to get a bunch of, that higher trust flow kind of crawlability to your site. Once you start doing this, you're going to realize that the inner pages, if you're doing your content plan proper, meaning you've got the entire niche umbrella, right? The topical map is pretty well developed. You're going after some low-hanging fruit. You'll realize that a lot of the low-hanging fruit will not need links to start ranking. And when you start seeing that inner page movement in the SERPs, you can go fine-tune with a lot less energy. So you come in with 1 or 2 guest posts or niche edits, and you do like an exact match or a long tail or something that's going to just kind of like move it up. And you've got to be a little bit more subtle this day and age, in my opinion, than you used to, or at least I am, because I like to practice SEO for longevity. To me, the churn and burn, even if it's, a couple of years, and I've done this and I'll talk about it as far as an e-com endeavor that I had, it's just not, I like things to last. I would like to be able to pass it off to somebody else. I don't like the churn and burn aspect. But so, natural anchors to the homepage, get that thing moving up, and then you can start diversifying with higher authority backlinks like guest posts, niche ads, maybe PBN if you want to play that game, and more exact match anchors or strategic anchors, so to speak.
Yeah. So that's the sort of overview. We've got the pillows, we've got the next steps. It's a bit like a pyramid, isn't it?
A
You're
pyramid,
getting quite a few.
100%. Yeah.
I think it's we use that analogy in our process.
Yeah.
Now,
Well,
so
go ahead.
no, you're okay.
Well, I was going to say, you have to be careful talking about a pyramid because a lot of people think, well, that doesn't sound good. But no, a pyramid here in the hierarchy of our diets or something like that, right?
Yeah, you've got sort of the pyramid with the sort of quite broad foundation. There's some sort of good links coming through from probably easier, but like you say, even like some of the local things you can get quite easily, like directories as well, local directories, which quite often some of these sites have been around for a decade or two. They've got a good internal, very specific categories on some of the directories, haven't they? That are very specific to the niches of the e-com stores that are very real sort of categories, subcategories that match up the watchers in this instance, or a retailer or something. Some of them have physical addresses, which is obviously a bonus as well. Yeah.
So sorry. Well, I did a video actually last week, an over-the-shoulder live stream on hunting domains. And that's something that comes to mind as well. I think 301 starts are something I always really like to do as well, and they help you pillow if you know what you're looking for. Especially lately, I think for local relevance, finding a 301 with some very nice geographic links, especially in metros where those are hard to get, is an incredible hack. Throw a 301
so for our
in
listeners then, so a 301 link, I think there'll be a lot of our listeners won't know what that is. I think in terms of, so you're a bit of a hunter. Would that be fair?
Yes, very much so.
Hunting for domains and then doing what with domains? Maybe explain the process, because I think
absolutely.
it's something. I did spoken about it.
I think my over the shoulder lasted about an hour and a half, so I'll give you a little
You've got
kind
90
of
seconds.
synopsis here. But you can go through and you'll watch. Like, it's a very arduous kind of thing, because you take your niche and then you use a tool like Spamzilla, which is going to aggregate a bunch of data on websites that have been expired, meaning people stopped paying for them and they dropped, and you can buy them for $7 to $10, or age domains, which you can go buy at like GoDaddy auctions, which are still in search a lot of the times, indexed You're going to typically pay a premium for them, but then you can utilize those domains a bit quicker. So when you purchase a domain, you've got options for what you're going to use it for. A 301 is where you take the history of that website in the form of its backlinks and you send it to a new domain. So I send watch site number 3 that I bought hunting domains to my watch site money site, and it's going to take over all that power from the historical backlinks that it had. Now, this used to work incredibly fast. You could do this and get things ranking really quickly. Now there's a bit more nuance to how you want to do it, especially if you're messing with expired domains, things like that. But you have to imagine that if you go and purchase a domain, let's say for even like, I've spent up to 15 grand on a domain because I knew what it would do for my business, right? I overpaid in a sense, but if you know the ROI you can get off it and you know exactly what you're trying to do with this goal set, it is very worthwhile, because you have to imagine that if you get links from Forbes or very niche down publications, especially on something like watches, try and buy a watch Forbes post. I know what they cost right now because we started doing digital PR, and it is not cheap. So if you can go buy one of these domains and you're hacking, sometimes up to like 50 of these links, think about what that does for your backlink profile right out of the gate. Or never mind 301ing, just when you're conceptualizing a new business, go look and see if there's anything available for you to start off on. I like to get started that way myself.
That's good, isn't it?
Now, you might be looking for an SEO boost, a down-to-earth digital PR campaign to share your story, or maybe just some straightforward technical help to amp up your performance. Now that's where Ecom Now comes in. A partner that's all about making things easier for your online store. Our services cover everything from creating professional content for your e-commerce categories to refining your product descriptions. Now, whether you're just starting out or have been in it for a while, we're here to deliver real, impactful results that add to your bottom line without unnecessary commitments. You can order one-off or multiple projects with a quick turnaround. Simply choose what you need.
So I think for the listeners, there's obviously domains out there that are expired. They have expired or they're expiring, and some drop, and they're literally $10 or so, and obviously some are more monetized and sell for a few $1,000s, like your $15,000 example. But ultimately, you've got to weigh up then what is that domain worth for you in terms of the link profile that you can point to your domain. If you're doing a link building exercise where you're spending a couple of grand a month, or $5 a month on links, but you're getting, it's not exact science with the math, but you're getting 10 really high authority links. So over a period of 6 months, you might be spending 30 grand on X amount of links. But if you can buy a domain that's already got those links for $1,000, $500, or $5 grand, but those links existed for years and years and years, and have got that history behind them from pages that existed on those sites years ago. That's a seriously powerful link, isn't it? And you're literally, it's like flicking a switch almost, isn't it? Because obviously you're getting the credit card out, you're spending the grand or whatever it is. And then you're going, right, take all this power and point it to these pages or this domain. And it's,
Yeah. For people that aren't, very SEO minded, just conceptualize it as business A has bought business B and they are taking over and merging. That's it. That's all that's going on. And that's the narrative that you're feeding Google here, right? Or any search. What you can do in conjunction with that is run a press release or something that says company A bought company B. It's a good opportunity to create a narrative. A lot of times, more technical SEOs will not consider the narrative as being important, which is something that's very important for PR, that kind of concept. And you can really blend these things in, and make a nice gray hat kind of medley that works real well.
So the first agency, well, our other agency is SEO, trafficlab.com. Still there, but we're very much focused on Ecom One now for the last sort of 7 years.
Sure.
But I had the opportunity probably 10 years ago to buy. So where we are, we're in the county of Lincolnshire in the UK, and I think it's the second or biggest county in the UK. Big county, landmass wise, it's a huge county. So we had the opportunity to buy SEOlincolnshire.com.
Yeah.
This is about 10 years ago, and I bought that domain for literally nothing. I think it was like £100.
Yeah.
And then all I did was point it to SEOtrafficlab.com. And now we already rank very well, but now it's very hard for anybody to knock me off the ranking for SEO Lincolnshire. I think anybody listening now, type in SEO Lincolnshire into Google in the UK, or, for a UK search, and we will be we've been number one, and we've never moved. And I think that's one of the big reasons, we bought that domain. It's one of a few things, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a 15-year-old domain that I own as well, which is a big thing. But we bought that domain. It had at the time about 20 links. I don't know how many are there now. And then we redirected. It was like, straight. It was like a laser target to number one on Google.
Yeah. I love that you brought up 20 links, because a lot of times people hunting domains are going to be like, well, and I talk about this in the over your shoulder. Oh, well, that's not going to do anything. It's only got 20 referring to. No. If you know how to manually look at where these are coming from and whether they're quality or not, sometimes it just takes one or two in the right spot to really knock you up. And when you've got that recipe and you get that number one and you're getting that traffic, it does get hard to knock the king of the hill off, right? That. Yeah.
Right. So we covered some good ground. We've kicked off well. We've covered a few things there. Got the foundations. We've we're talking about 301s and buying domains. But I think, a lot of the stores that are listening in, they'll have a lot of the foundation in place already.
Sure.
They'll have quite a lot of the foundations, the directories, and, they're going to be doing some good business. And I think what's really going to help them and help them sort of move the needle, excuse the sort of puns, but I think to move the needle is sort of more of a scalability. So building out, you touched on digital PR, you touched on outreach and building out, systematic. And I know you're a big systems guy. I know we've spoke a lot about SOPs and systems. But what advice would you give to our listeners around sort of scaling the link building for their brands? And
Sure.
What sort of systems they can maybe look at implementing, or what sort of systems do you recommend for people that are really serious about it?
Okay. I think first off, people have to be honest with where they're at in their business. It's a very subjective thing. And I find a lot of business owners operate under envy, right? And I don't think that's a good place to be, especially when conceptualizing where you should be spending money in your business. So let's say I'm a pretty decent sized e-com brand and I've got the opportunity to conceptualize what I want to do with a backlinks budget. Your options are you create an in-house team, or you yourself start going and finding random, spots on the internet to kind of partner and, like you could go to like Fiverr or something, find like 15 different types of links, styles, and vendors, and create a medley. And I've got a case study on doing stuff like that. I'll tell you, not a great thing to do anymore, but it's just that you could do that. Or you can go find, other link vendors, like myself or others. There's other really good reputable link vendors out there. Like our flagship product is managed link building. Yeah. The reason we have that is because there's a bunch of clientele that just want to automate link building. They probably have a good understanding of it, or typically they do if they've found us, right? It's not completely new people, though we cater to that as well. But they understand the value of backlinks and SEO. And so we give full reporting that they could use, white label, whatever, that explains exactly why we did what we did, why we're picking the recipes that we're using, and giving them full-fledged understanding of what we're doing, right? So those are basically your main options: is outreach, do it yourself or in-house team, which is going to be a slow roll. And it's going to take quite a lot of money. A lot of people don't understand the amount of work that goes into that. Sure, you could probably procure links for cheaper, but once you're really into scaling, that's where I think about it. And I'm like, if I went back in time and told myself, what aspects of SEO to focus on, I wouldn't say backlinking. I would say sales and running an agency or something like that, or whatever I was good at the time. Backlinks is kind of a slow roll. I think, if somebody's working on this happened recently, and I'm going to put it up in the group. Somebody sent a very, very nice email to our MLB team saying, look, we really appreciate everything you guys have done. This has been phenomenal. We've gotten good results, etc. But last month at a conference, I met a guy here in Australia that like is a really good fit for me. We've been doing really well. And while like things are going really well, I think I found something that fits a little bit better in my business right now. But, you know, praising the team for doing what they did, but he just found his new, you know, kind of way. I think that's an excellent way to go about it. In business, a lot of times that I found, you're going to go through layers, right? So at the start, look at what's most easy for you to scale up and start getting that revenue coming in.
Yeah.
Nothing is going to help you build a business quicker than making sure you've got a steady stream of revenue coming in, because looking for the cheapskate way out is oftentimes a failure point for most people. And I know, because I was a failure in SEO for like the first 3-4 years, man. It was not easy at all. And I was looking for recipes to link building, which if I had to go back again, I'd say, hey, man, ads, other stuff, get that money coming in and then figure out these recipes. You know, so I kind of feel like I went backwards. So, you know, ecom, you're doing well. You've already got a foundation. My personal advice would be, at that time, find a company, whether it's us or somebody else, that does a managed link building, a quality one with reporting. Even if you're just going to do that for 4, 5, 6 months, you're going to get recipes to what builds success, right?
You'll see that.
And then off of that, look at it. And then if you want to bring on a team, fine. Start looking on Upwork or any number of things, and, you know, take what you've learned and start playing with it. But don't expect that you're just going to be able to come up with it right out of the gate, because it's going to take you time. So that's why I say blend. Make sure you get the income. Sales matter a whole lot in entrepreneurship. Get that income and then start R&D, research and development, right? And then move from there. If it's profitable, cool. If it's too much of a headache, which I think a lot of people that underestimate outreach and all that, you know, sometimes they'll try it out for a handful of months and they'll be like, fuck, F that, you know? So.
It's gone to an 18 episode already, Nick. We're only 20 minutes in. That's the first F we've had. I'm sure it won't be the last, but that's fine.
On our show, we say them. Sorry.
So I think that's great advice. I think it's a little bit of a loaded question, because ultimately, you know, our listeners, you know, they're successful business owners, marketeers at sizable e-com stores. And of course, they want to have a little bit of ownership, but really you want an expert doing, you know, the task but obviously there's different types of link building, which we've touched on. You know, it's always good to have like some of the digital PR stuff, for example, if you've got potentially somebody within the e-com store that can be the face of the business, that wants to go on podcasts, wants to be the spokesperson. That's something as a business you can get more involved with as individuals within that e-com store. But there's nothing better than ultimately knowing that in a month in, month out, a team that is a reliable resource is building X amount of links or X amount of resources getting spent, whether that's time, money, but usually money and usually both, but more so, you know, if you can ultimately, you know, pay a specialist like your team and our teams to build out X amount per month on a consistent basis, you'll soon know whether it's working or not, won't you? And then obviously then that's where, you know, that's where you sort of invest more in certain link building strategies. Some obviously work better and so forth. And obviously, you touched on the in-house versus outsource, and I think that's very much, again, you know, it depends on the size of the business. But I think ultimately, you know, if you're of a certain size of a business, you need a certain volume of change. You know, I remember having probably 2 weeks ago, I had a company come to me, and they were right. We're doing 10 million a year in English pounds, and we want to get to 20 million. And I said, well, talk to me about your SEO, what you're doing in SEO. Well, we're working with an agency. I said, oh, that's great. Yeah. And they're building 1 or 2 links a month.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, so there's no way on God's earth, there's no way on God's earth you're going to add 10 million. I mean, I think about 30% of the rev was coming from SEO, but you want to add 3 million a year from SEO. You're not really producing much content in terms of, you know, quality and, well, more volume, and you're building 1 or 2 links a month. That is never going to happen, or very unlikely. There's a few caveats to that.
I mean, miracle happenings, right?
Yeah. So you've got to be very realistic, haven't you? And that sort of in-house outsource to have an understanding, of, but I think that brings me on nicely to my next question. So I think, we're going back to the watches, for example, this sort of competitive analysis, when you're analyzing a niche or a category, subcategory of a niche, or you got your watches, you've got your sports dial, or your diving watch, I think you mentioned.
Sure.
How do you conduct a deep dive analysis to identify gaps that we can then build links into those? Just step me through that process. Give us a bit of insight, because I think there's some very specific things you guys do with e-commerce.
Sure. Yeah. So for link gap analysis, I'm guessing, right? I don't get too crazy with it. Some people will. I look in Ahrefs, I get a feel for what a link profile looks like. And since I've got a decent sized link network behind me, I'm mainly just looking at basic gauges like how powerful the link network pointed at this competitor is. Which ones are maybe very niche specific, and what percentage is very niche specific, I think, or geographic specific, I've noticed has been very important lately. If you need those links. So, I'm going to go into Ahrefs, and what I'm mainly doing is I'm actually just going to the SERPs and SERPs is, the search pages themselves for particular queries. So like best dive watch, and I'm going to look at who's in there, and then I'm going to see what other, SERPs they're showing up for. And then I'm going to manually comb these competitors in Ahrefs, and I'm going to look at what they've got going on. Then I'm going to put them against the asset that I'm working on and kind of see what's going on there. From that, I'm going to conceptualize how many links and what type of links I'm going to try and get based on the budget for either that project or for that project, right, or client. So it's going to change, and it's going to be very subjective based on that particular asset, and really right now, whether it's local or whether it's a national campaign, because the geographic links have been an issue. And then on national campaigns, what you're coming to find is that PR and high authority kind of stuff is mattering a whole lot more. So, that's why I added PR to the toolkit, because sometimes you need custom outreach, which is something that's really hard to automate to scale, right, for a bunch of clients, which is why we kind of only just added that thing. It took a lot of, working on, because, if you've got your mindset from gray hat perspective, and then all of a sudden you have to switch to more white hat, which is basically what's happened to me over the last couple of years. You'll start working those angles. I think as far as doing the white hat angles, stuff that's going to help you is like using ChatGPT and other things that'll help you craft amazing copy, things like that.
So we've done. So we took the client, or the target site. We looked at the competitors, what's ranking. We've gone to Ahrefs, the tool of all SEOs and link builders. And then we're basically looking at the gaps, and then and then what? Are you looking at sort of the gap, like looking at DA primarily, and
primarily,
organic traffic, and then you're going 30 to 50, 50 to 60, 60 to 70, 70 plus on the DA. What's the gaps? Right, we need ultimately about 300 links or whatever it may be. So this is the plan over the next 6, 8, 12 months. We're going to build 15 links a month and so forth, and bridge that gap. But obviously the gap's changing all the time, isn't it? Obviously, if the person we're talking about, that site, obviously the gap that we've analyzed today is the 300 links. We start the process to bridge that gap. But obviously in 12 months, those competitors are also doing link building. How do you factor that in, or how do you sort of account for? Because it comes down to budget at the end of the day, I guess. But
that's what I want to. Yeah, well, that's what I want to say. That's why I kind of ignore all this. To me, this goes back to the envy route, which if you're constantly looking at what the competitor and what the winner is doing,
Yeah.
you might be pulling your hair, trying to emulate what they're doing when you should be working on what you should be doing. Now, what you should be doing often has to do with what, what do you have behind you? What can you utilize that's going to give you a competitive advantage against these people? Well, for me, it's easy because I spent the last 10 years putting together, a power hub in the form of backlinks, right? So if I know that I've got my topical map completely fleshed out, again, I'm
Yeah.
predominantly using Ahrefs to figure this stuff out. If you've got one tool to rule it all, it's Ahrefs,
Yeah.
So topical maps, all good. I know how much of the budget is going direct to content and which part of the map. I'm building out low-hanging fruit as well as the topical authority stuff that eventually I want to rank for, knowing that I'm not going to immediately get that. It's all about building the stepping stones and giving that to search, right? And letting that resonate. With backlinks, it's kind of the same thing. I'm primarily going to be concerned with, let's say a new client comes to me or a new project. What's your budget? All right, let's split that up probably evenly if it's a brand new site into content and backlinks. That gives me X amount of backlinks. Well, let's look at these competitors real quick and see how strong they are. Even if I don't have Ahrefs, and I know a lot of people don't, your people probably do, most viewers, but if I don't, well, fine. Grab something like Mozbar and go down the SERPs and just see what kind of power is there. Get a feel for it. And that'll help you conceptualize whether your budget is really going to be able to allow you to attack some of this stuff. Some of y'all, I'm sorry, bite off a little more than you can chew. Maybe not so much your clientele, but some of my little guys come here and they're like, hey, I got $500 a month and I want best dive watch, my man. Oh, I see. So be realistic with what you're doing. But if you are going after that low hanging fruit, if you understand where your competitor is very strong and where they're very weak, and then start attacking that, the issue with considering just like a link gap or topical map analysis is that there's so many variables involved with ranking that you can't just look at one aspect and hope that that's going to give you the narrative you want. You have to continually be looking at the whole picture. And a lot of times, what you'll come to find is that if you want to be one of the big dogs, you have to start really small. And you have to start attacking SERPs that start kind of building a reputation that goes after this big stuff. And then once you're one of those mega competitors, well, that's when the fun happens because you don't really need too many backlinks. You're getting them. Yeah, you're crafting good content. It's auto ranking. I mean, like there is no better feeling than an e-commerce store where you put up a new product and it's just
out of the gate it's ranking. Yeah, I think that's really well sort of explained, because I think ultimately a lot of e-com stores have got thousands, if not tens of thousands of products. So trying to dominate the biggest key terms out the gate is ridiculous. No matter what your budget is, really ish. So if we're looking at sort of categories, subcategories, picking the right fight with the right budget, looking at the level of competitiveness. So no, do you know what? With this subcategory, diving watches for men, and we've got 200 of these watches. That's a nice sub long tail, not quite long tail, but long tail-ish keyword. And we've built the topical map around diving watches for men. We've now got a series of links that we've analyzed from the 5-6 competitors or 3-4 competitors. So we know straight away there's some really good dive type sites. There's some really good watch diving sites. There's a lot of diving sites that we can build relationships with. Actually, we've got relationships with some of these already. So actually, that's a real, what relationships have you got in some of your subcategories, categories? What manufacturers might link to those subcategories, categories? And then you go, actually, we're not going to rank for the word watches, but do we want to yet? And do we want to at all? So it's picking the right categories, subcategories, which obviously all e-com stores have, unless you've got one product.
Well, and it's beautiful when you go after all these subcategories, then all of a sudden you wake up one morning and that parent page is at the top 3,
That's our language.
It just happened. Hard work pays off.
Yeah. So I think, you've covered a lot of ground very, very quickly, but I'm really keen to try and share with our listeners maybe another 1 or 2 sort of unconventional link building strategies that have been working for you. maybe in the last year, something that's quite new. We've covered a few things around outreach and different pillow links and a bit of PR. But what's a couple of things that maybe our listeners could maybe try and attempt, or maybe with some support from you guys, but also, maybe on their own? What are maybe one or two bit of unconventional, like, I've not heard that. You touched on 301 redirects. That's not talked about a lot, I don't think. But any others you could share?
Yeah, sure. And I was kind of conceptualizing this like, I got to always bring something to the table and give a tidbit that'll really pack a punch. So I was thinking, I don't want to just talk, but I will talk about some stuff that over the last year was doing well. Parasite SEO, if y'all aren't familiar with it, where you're getting essentially a blog post on a high authority site, then you're ranking that blog post in the SERPs in search for particular terms like best dive watch, but it's your brand ranking there. That stuff was doing really well. But a lot of people have talked on about a lot of these things, that then in December, there's a big shift on that core update. And a lot of people still don't know what the hell's going on. I myself have been looking, but in hunting domains the other day, I was and working on something specific for a client. I've been, I think I found two things that I don't see anybody talking about, that I was like, well, I'll just bring this up here then, because I kind of lightly brought it up over the shoulder. One thing that I'm noticing right now, and I know we said we'd talk about backlinks, but again, everything works in conjunction, right? For content, what I'm noticing is a lot of us that like to manipulate search completely omit those opinion pieces and the type of pieces that go up on a website without any kind of search intent whatsoever. And I've started adding some of that to see what it does. And so far, I'm seeing some results that I think, add a good amount of benefit. So, maybe add a little bit of this type of informational content that's not crafted just for search. You're not putting it in Surfer SEO to optimize it for keywords, things like that. Now, on a backlink perspective, earlier I was talking about in local searches, trying to find, like in metros where there's maybe like 50,000 people and so many businesses, et cetera, it's hard to get links that are very specific, but they'll help you a lot, especially now in the map pack. So one experimental thing I'm doing, and I guess I'll bring up 301s again, that I haven't tried in a while, is, since a lot of times in these more very specific niches, you're hunting for domains that, like you had touched on, maybe only have like 20 referring domains going to them. So they don't seem that powerful. However, whenever I purchase a domain, what I'm going to initially do is build like a PBN style. So like just a basic mock-up website. I'm going to look in Ahrefs. I'm going to see what the most powerful pages were. I'm going to get those built out so that the crawlability is resonating again. And I'm just going to let them sit there and warm up for the next month, 2 months. I've even let them sit for over a year for expired domains that it took that long to get them indexed. And I'm not trying to force index to do anything unnatural. I just know if I find something and I want, its backlink profile, then this is what I'm going to do. Then I'm going to look for that website to start resonating in the search a little bit. Or, just get some kind of organic value.
Get some traction.
And then I call it warmed up. And so at that point, I could 301 one to another, wait a month or two, that one to another one. And all of a sudden I've built a network of 301s with 100 referring domains, very specific to a very niche specific thing. And I can wait for that to look to have good a value, and I'll still add content. Maybe I don't, work that hard on the content, knowing that eventually I'm just going to just remove it and 301 it to my money site once it looks like it's really powerful. Then I'm going to do a little PR campaign, a link blast. And this is something that I'm going to touch on that I think is probably the most important thing I ever learned in link building. Early on in my education, I had a buddy in the security realm who had a website, who figured out some interesting security flaw and posted it. This was a little 10-page website, no backlinks going to it, no concept of SEO, nothing like that. Well, I put it in Ahrefs the next day after that content went viral, and I saw how a website can get inner page links, like 1,000 links overnight, and it just shot up through the SERPs. I mean, rocket direct up. So I started analyzing, well, what is it about this site that like insulated it? Because at the time, people were like, if link velocity is too fast, you're going to crash that site. You'll never get it back. All this fear mongering bullshit. And it's just it wasn't true. So I'm looking and I go, it has to do with the diversification of the backlinks, the anchor texts, where they're coming from. All of that would be incredibly hard to emulate because most people are just selling one type of backlink. Yeah, and that's when I started piecing together different types of backlinks because I wanted the full-fledged recipe. If you go to my case study, 0 to 10,000, do not do that. I need to put an update on there because all the spammy tactics I took killed that site. But I talk about kind of overloading the system early on with a bunch of different types of backlinks and then going from there.
Yeah.
So these are some things that you can consider.
Yeah. No, I think like for our listeners, when you're trying to rank a particular category, you search for the key terms, so some of the key terms for that category, subcategory, and then you see certain authority sites that are maybe they're not selling the product or they're not, it's not a direct competitor, but these are the parasite opportunities that you can reach out to, and it's quite often quite an easy win, isn't it? You reach out, you're adding value, and quite often there's not an exchange of cash. Quite sometimes of that that type of link takes time, obviously, so you're still paying for it in one way or another. But these are high domain authority sites that are already ranking for that term, and that's one of the best clues ever, isn't it? If something's ranking for the terms you want to rank for, it's like, well, we want to emulate that, be on that site, reverse engineer that. Why is that there? Right. If it's pure, like, the simplest thing in simplest terms, if you're trying to rank a product, you search for that product, but it's not products that are ranking, it's something else completely. It's video, it's images, it's FAQs. Then that's a bit of a clue that the sort of things you want to create potentially.
Exactly. Yeah. Follow what Google wants. It's telling you in every SERP what it wants. That's always the best place to start, and then you move with the tools, right?
Yeah, and then I like the idea of sort of creating new information, a new angle on information, because I think obviously creating content is getting easier, shall we say? Obviously, various tools that are very readily available for zero money and small amount of labor potentially. But obviously, that's taking content and reworking content that exists already. Whereas if you're coming from an angle that's a fresh angle or creating something completely fresh, you're adding something unique to the SERP. Making something like an asset that's more linkable too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always liked the gray hat aspect of things, but they're a white hat campaign and getting a viral piece of content, that's phenomenal. That'll propel you really quickly. Yeah.
Let's maybe talk about, let me think. I've got a couple of directions I'm thinking of going now. So let's maybe hit us with another case study. Obviously you talked about a couple of things there, but maybe you don't have to say the brand name, or unless you want to, of course. Sort of a very specific. Obviously, you've got a lot of clients you're working with week in, week out, month in, month out. Some of us have been with you a long, long time. An actual hands-on case study of the sort of things you've been doing for a certain type of client.
Yeah. So this comes up actually quite a lot, whether it's in MLB or anywhere where we're auditing new clientele that comes in specifically. I'll see a lot of what you talked about earlier. So-and-so had a SEO agency. One that comes to mind is a Fortune 500 company I work with that was paying something like $30,000 a month American. And when I looked at what they did over the course of a year, it was something like 15 backlinks of no quality. The content map was all garbage. We're talking about 500 to 1,000 words going up, things like that. And that is a very common thing that I'm seeing. So just doing things right, the way that we do them, and we talk about it all the time. Build out that topical map, keep content flowing. The network needs to be alive and consistent. That's what the algorithm really wants to see, is
Yeah.
constant content going up that's not manipulatable, and backlinks, without being too aggressive, etc. I can tell you that within the MLB, we've got countless ecom clientele that I can look. Natural anchors, 80% to the homepage, 20% money anchors to the inner page for the majority of all these projects. Typically, that's how I've taught the employees to handle things, unless the client wants to do something else. And then that's on them. But I'll tell you, when people get too aggressive with things, especially lately, you're seeing a tank. And lately, over the last 2 years, when you see that happen, it's a pretty sad day, because it's
Yeah.
not easy to remedy this stuff anymore. So things that are really working, stick to the basics. You need content going up regularly, split the budget up. Don't think that you can stop that. You're not stopping any of this. This is a living, breathing thing. A business always is. Your website is part of that. It needs its circulatory system going. Let's call that the backlinks, and whatever else is the content. And in order to function as a healthy site in the SERPs, you need both of those things in conjunction. But keep it simple. That's it. Like, I get worried with these questions, because then I'm like, well, I could tell you some complex stuff, but is that really like what helps in the end? No, it's sticking to the basics. I think that's the thing.
Yeah. No, you're preaching to the choir. I think it's, I think the industry's overcomplicated itself and made it way more mysterious than it needs to be.
Yes.
There's quite a simple formula there, isn't there? You're creating X, Y, Z content, and of course, we don't want to simplify it too much. There's a lot of research needs to go into that you're creating the right content, and then obviously there's the different types of relationships you need to build links, or work with a third party like yourself. But I'll tell you one question I'm going to throw into the mix. Disavow, what's your take? Yes or no?
I rarely ever do it. And by rarely ever, I mean, I don't know the last time that I did it or advised a client to do it. I think that when you get to that dark place where nothing seems to be working, if you've been spammed out, etc., then get a disavow done. It's something easy you can do. You can go to Fiverr and get somebody to mock something up for you, and then just make sure that you're actually manually combing those links. And a lot of the stuff they're going to get rid of is based on third-party metrics that don't matter. And here's why I don't like disavows, is because oftentimes in recent history, whenever somebody has been trying to spam one of my assets or a client asset, I'll notice that it's got positive movement in the ranking, right? So I don't want to just, some people are egregious with like, oh, I got a bit of spam, I'm going to get in there and I'm going to automatically disavow. No, let it resonate. Risky. Sometimes spam is good. Take the edge where you can get it.
Take a bit of everyone's going to get a bit of spam, whether you intentionally did it or not, sort of thing. So Nick, it's been a pleasure having you on. I feel like we could do like 3 episodes. I feel like we just scratched the surface, but I get told off if we go over too much. So I'm gonna hit you with a couple of last questions. Crystal ball time. We're sat here in a couple of years' time, and you're saying, "Well, link building has done this, this, and this." What's your predictions? What are you, obviously we've talked about a lot of different things today, but what are your predictions around where things are going with link building? Obviously you're doing a bit more, or investing in digital PR, you're doing a lot more content with and aligning content with link building as well. But what are your what are you backing? Where are you putting your money this next year or so?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, because I think no matter how much you try and conceptualize where we're going to be in 5 years, it's hard to imagine, no matter how much information you think you have on the subject. I will say that since I got into SEO, the concept of SEO is going to be dead has been around the corner. I'm not worried about that. People are going to be searching, and there's still always going to be some sort of algorithm that's going to function off its major tenets, which backlinking content, are going to be pretty hard to get away from, right? That's a bread and butter kind of movement. So, as far as that goes, I feel very comfortable that I'm going to stay in my lane and mind my own business. I saw yesterday Neil Patel had put up a video that said you got 1 year left and then everything's gone in SEO. And he had a lot of interesting, good points in there. I think it's a good thing to watch, but obviously clickbait, right? What I am going to do, especially when I start considering that quantum computing is just around the corner, and that's where it starts getting real murky for me. What I want to just kind of focus on until that's around is diversifying what I'm doing. SEO can blend to all sorts of different digital marketing factions. And a lot of the time, that's what matters, is making sure that if you're successful in one field, to then diversify into a field that's close to what you're doing. And I'll just a little bit about that. I early on tried a little bit of everything. I failed at a lot of things. My first time having warehouse space, e-commerce products that we were manufacturing, all that stuff, it failed miserably. I lost a good amount of money on that, but I learned a lot. And in the end, that was a trial at diversification of what I was currently doing. Yeah. To me, it was a little bit too far from what I was doing. So now I've reined it in to be more related to, the SirLinksalot company or the agency. If you keep it nice and tight, you'll come to find that diversification within digital marketing is very simple once you've got some recipes, because the clientele wants a little bit of everything, or, you've kind of figured out how to sell one thing, you can sell the other thing. Yeah. So just keep diversifying. Even if we're not using Google in 5-10 years, there's still going to be
We'll be searching somewhere, won't we?
Yeah. So,
whether
just
that's on ChatGPT, other LLMs that are coming out every 3 days at the moment.
Dude, ChatGPT, I asked it a question the other day and it mentioned SirLinksalot, and I'm like, don't know how that happened, but it has to do with, I think, just creating the quality content. Maybe that's what's going to end up mattering more, is less content directive at search queries and more just informational content that gets bled in through just school of thought, right? So things to consider, or maybe it's time to be a little bit more intellectual with what we're doing. Maybe things are getting more advanced and it's time where, it was fun while the bank run was happening, especially you guys that were in, 15 years ago. I am so envious of that. But, the times they change, and that's natural. So just keep diversifying, keep your head up, and if you enjoy one aspect of digital marketing, it's not going anywhere. So that's my personal opinion.
Well, thanks, Nick. It's been a pleasure to have you on. We've been trying to get this together for a while, so I really appreciate your time. I like to finish every episode with a book recommendation. Any book on this planet that you would recommend to our listeners.
Man, there were two that came to mind, and a lot of times I'm on a business kick, and sometimes I'm on a bit more of a spiritual kick. I'm going to give you both. I'm sorry for breaking the rule, but Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, for a quick read that you can read several times whenever you need it, especially that little part on work and what it means and how it can help you spiritually, I think, is a phenomenal little piece, especially if you're feeling down. I don't know about you, but as an entrepreneur, I have felt burnout and hard just angles here and there that I never felt in anything else. Entrepreneurship is hard, and you need those kind words to help you through sometimes. And then one that I like that I think is just applicable to business, to life, and everything, is my favorite business book ever, even though I don't know if it's really business, is 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. And I love all his stuff, but I can always consider something that's going on in business or life. And if there's a little bit of turmoil or something like that, I can go to one of the laws in either that or Art of Seduction or any number of them, even the 50th law with 50 Cent. Like, you go and you just read excerpts, and it'll help you kind of understand some avenues you might want to take. And it's so broad that
it's quite a big book, isn't it? And quite a lot, but obviously, like you say, you can dip into it and I guess get a little gem out of wherever you end up, sort of thing. Well,
Yeah.
Nick, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on the show. For those that want to find out more about you, Nick, more about and connect with you and more about SirLinksalot, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, sure. Check us out on SirLinksalot.co. SirLinksalot on YouTube. Give us a like and subscribe. We're putting out content on there all the time. We're not doing courses or anything. It's all free information. I like to do it that way. And then, we've got an email list if you want to check out specials, and we put tidbits of information in there. And where we're most active is SEO Roundtable on Facebook, where we've got a great lot of people in there answering questions. It's all informational, no promotional stuff, yada yada.
Yeah, no, I'd really implore you guys to go and check out the YouTube and the Facebook community. I've been in there for about 3 years now, and you're always dropping, like you just said a couple of times through the episode, different videos, different case studies, what's working, trials, tests of different strategies, different clients, sort of industries, some real, so you sort of give away the farm on there. So really implore you to go and have a little look. Right. Well, thanks, Nick. I'll see you someday soon in another country. Yes. Who knows where?
I think it'll be hopefully this year. We'll get out for a little bit. It'd be nice.
Yeah. I'm hoping. I'll see you in Chiang Mai in a few months' time.
That's what I'm thinking.
Nice to see you, buddy. Good. Cheers.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this episode, hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you are listening to this podcast, so you're always the first to know when a new episode is released. Have a fantastic day, and I'll see you on the next one.